Hey guys, Ryan here. Tonight we're not just dimming the lights, we're stepping back in time, all the way to ancient China. Imagine yourself trudging through dusty marketplaces, the scent of ginger and exotic spices thick in the air, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoing through narrow alleyways. You feel the rough texture of handmade paper beneath your fingers, hear the rhythmic thump-thump of a loom weaving silk, and you catch the faint scent of something explosive. Tonight, we're unraveling the incredible story of inventions that burst forth from this vibrant civilization, shaping the very world you live in, often in ways you'd never even guess. You probably won't survive this journey unchanged, knowing how many of your daily conveniences sprung from these ancient roots. Before we settle in, if this resonates with you, hit like and subscribe only if you're here for more of this vibe. And hey, if you're listening, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always cool to see where everyone's tuning in from. Gently lower the lights, switch on that soothing fan breeze, and come with me as we unwind into tonight's adventure. Our journey begins, perhaps fittingly, with something you interact with every single day: paper. You hold a book, jot down a note, or maybe even wrap a gift, and you rarely stop to think about the journey of that humble sheet. But imagine a world without it. A world where knowledge was etched onto heavy bamboo strips, laboriously carved into tortoiseshell, or painted onto incredibly expensive silk. That's the world ancient China was navigating before the invention of paper as we know it. You're standing in a small workshop, the air thick with the faint scent of wood pulp and damp fibers. The craftsman, a figure named Cai Lun, is experimenting. It's the year 105 CE, and he's not just messing around, he's on a mission, tasked by the imperial court to find a better, cheaper writing surface. You watch as he mixes mulberry bark, hemp, old rags, and even discarded fishing nets. Yes, really. He boils them down, mashes them into a pulp, and then, with practiced movements, pours the slurry onto a flat, porous mold, gently shaking it to distribute the fibers evenly. The water drains away, leaving behind a thin, wet mat. This isn't a quick process, it's one of patient refinement. He then presses out the remaining water and leaves the sheet to dry, perhaps in the sun, perhaps draped over a frame. The result? A smooth, lightweight, and surprisingly durable surface, infinitely more practical than anything that came before it. Historians still argue whether Cai Lun was the absolute first to tinker with paper-making materials, or if he merely perfected and standardized an existing, fragmented process. But what is undeniable is that his systematic approach and official recognition catapulted paper from an experimental curiosity to a widespread reality. Before Cai Lun, written records were a monumental undertaking, literally. Think about trying to write a novel on bamboo slats, each one connected by string. It would be less a book and more a very heavy, inconvenient fence. The sheer bulk of ancient records is mind-boggling when you consider the materials. The invention of paper wasn't just about a new material, it was about democratizing knowledge, making it lighter, cheaper, and more accessible. It meant ideas could travel further, faster, and be preserved with greater ease. It laid the groundwork for entire libraries to be formed, for government decrees to be widely disseminated, and for poetry and prose to flourish beyond the elite. Without it, the next great invention we'll explore would have been practically impossible. You're still in that workshop, the faint aroma of fresh paper still clinging to the air, but now, centuries have passed. The year is closer to 868 CE, and the quiet rustle of a single sheet of paper is about to be amplified 1,000,000 times over. You see, with paper readily available, the next logical step was to make copies, and lots of them. Imagine copying an entire book by hand, character by character. Your hand would cramp, your eyes would ache, and the sheer number of errors would be enough to make a modern-day editor weep. This was the laborious reality of scribes for centuries, a task so demanding it limited the spread of information to a privileged few. Now, picture a new scene. You're in a bustling monastery, not in some quiet corner with a quill, but in a room filled with the rhythmic thud and scrape of wood blocks. This is where block printing takes center stage. You watch as a craftsman carves an entire page of text and illustrations, in reverse, onto a block of wood. It's incredibly intricate work, requiring immense skill and patience. Every single character, every line, every tiny detail must be perfectly rendered. Once the carving is complete, ink, often made from lamp black and glue, is applied to the raised surfaces of the block. A sheet of CAI Lunds paper is then carefully laid over the inked block and rubbed with a soft brush or at the baron, a flat, padded tool, to ensure an even transfer of ink. When the paper is lifted, voila! A perfect impression. This wasn't just a slight improvement, it was a quantum leap. The earliest known complete printed book, the Diamond Sutra, dated 868 CE, exemplifies this mastery. You can almost feel the reverence held for this artifact as you imagine it being produced, each page a testament to precision and dedication. It's more than just a book, it's a testament to the fact that ideas, once bound by the slow hand of a scribe, could now spread with a speed previously unimaginable. Think of it, a single carved block could produce hundreds, even thousands, of identical copies. This drastically reduced the cost and time involved in reproducing texts, making education more accessible, and allowing for the wider dissemination of religious scriptures, government documents, and literary works. But the story doesn't end with wood blocks. While incredibly effective for short texts or repeated images, carving a new block for every page of every book was still immensely time-consuming. Imagine wanting to print a different book, you'd have to carve entirely new blocks. This is where the truly revolutionary idea of movable type enters the scene, around the 11th century. You're watching an inventor named Bai Sheng, a commoner, not an imperial scholar, as he experiments with individual characters made of baked clay. He arranges them in a frame, inks them, and prints. When he's done, he simply disassembles the frame, cleans the characters, and they're ready to be used again for another page, another book. This sounds remarkably familiar, doesn't it? It's the very principle that Johannes Gutenberg would later adopt in Europe, often mistakenly credited with the invention of printing, rather than its independent reinvention and mass application. Historians still argue about the extent of influence Chinese movable type had on Gutenberg, but the independent development is a fascinating parallel. The impact of printing, both block and movable type, was profound. It wasn't just about books, it was about almanacs, calendars, medical texts, and even playing cards. Imagine the sheer joy of a scholar suddenly having access to multiple copies of a classic text, or a common person being able to afford a copy of a religious scripture. It was the ancient world's information superhighway, allowing knowledge to travel across vast distances and permeate different layers of society. Without this monumental step, the next invention, a substance that would literally explode onto the world stage, would have remained a mere curiosity, perhaps confined to a few alchemists' smoky laboratories. You're no longer in a quiet workshop or a bustling monastery. Instead, you're in a dimly lit laboratory, the air thick with the pungent smell of sulfur and the acrid tang of something burning. The year is sometime in the 9th century, during the late Tang dynasty, and you're witnessing the accidental birth of something that will change the course of warfare, and even celebrations, forever: gunpowder. You see alchemists, not warriors or engineers, at work. They aren't trying to invent a weapon. Their goal is far more fantastical: to discover the elixir of immortality. They're meticulously grinding and mixing various substances, following recipes passed down through generations, filled with exotic ingredients and cryptic instructions. They combine sulfur, charcoal, and, crucially, saltpeter, potassium nitrate. This last ingredient, you'd soon realize, is the key. You watch as one of them heats the mixture, perhaps a bit too enthusiastically. Suddenly, whoosh! A bright flash, a loud bang, and a cloud of smoke fills the room. Thankfully, no one is seriously hurt, but the alchemists are shaken, bewildered, and probably a little deaf. This wasn't the immortality they were seeking, but it was something far more potent. Early gunpowder wasn't the refined, stable explosive we know today. It was more like a flash powder, prone to fizzling rather than exploding. But even in its crude form, its potential was immediately recognized. You can almost see the gears turning in the minds of military strategists. This wasn't just a loud bang, it was a way to project force, to break down walls, and to instill terror in the enemy. The first military applications of gunpowder were relatively simple. You'd see bamboo tubes filled with the mixture and hurled at enemies, primitive flamethrowers spewing fire and smoke. Later, these tubes were attached to arrows or spears, creating early forms of rockets. You can imagine the chaos and fear these devices would cause on the battlefield, the sudden bursts of flame and the thick, choking smoke disrupting formations and sowing panic. It took centuries for gunpowder technology to mature. The Song dynasty, from the 10th to the 13th centuries, saw significant advancements. You're now witnessing the development of true bombs, cast iron containers filled with gunpowder and fuses, hurled from catapults or dropped from city walls. These weren't just firecrackers, they were devastating weapons, capable of breaching fortifications and inflicting heavy casualties. One particularly terrifying weapon was the thunderclap bomb, an early fragmentation bomb that would scatter shards of iron upon detonation. The effect must have been horrific, a terrifying combination of blast and shrapnel. Historians still argue about the precise chemical compositions and effectiveness of these early gunpowder weapons, but the overall impact is undeniable. Gunpowder revolutionized warfare, shifting the balance of power and leading to the development of new tactics and strategies. It wasn't just about brute force, it was about distance, projection, and psychological warfare. And, of course, gunpowder wasn't just about war. You see its more peaceful applications emerging: fireworks. The same explosive power that could level a city could also create dazzling displays of light and color. Imagine the awe and wonder of the first people to witness these fiery spectacles, the night sky suddenly erupting in brilliant patterns. From these humble, accidental beginnings in an alchemist's lab, gunpowder's journey had just begun, a journey that would reshape not only warfare but also celebrations, and ultimately, the world. From the explosive chaos of gunpowder, you now shift your focus to something far more subtle, yet equally revolutionary: the quiet, unwavering pull of a magnetized needle. You're no longer surrounded by sulfur fumes, but perhaps standing on the deck of a ship, feeling the sway of the waves, or maybe in a geomancer's study, surrounded by intricate diagrams. The year is the 11th century, during the Song dynasty, and the invention before you is the compass. For centuries, travelers and mariners had relied on the sun, the stars, and familiar landmarks to find their way. Imagine sailing out of sight of land, under a cloudy sky, with no celestial guides to lead you. It's a truly terrifying prospect, one that limited exploration and trade to coastal routes and fair weather. But the Chinese had been aware of magnetism for a long time. You see, they noticed that a naturally occurring iron ore called lodestone, if suspended freely, would always point in a particular direction. This wasn't magic, it was science, albeit a science they were still unraveling. Early compasses weren't the neat, encased devices you know today. You might see a lodestone carved into the shape of a fish, floating in a bowl of water, its head always pointing south. Or perhaps a piece of magnetized iron, shaped like a spoon, resting on a bronze plate. This was the south-pointing spoon, and it was originally used not for navigation at sea, but for geomancy, the practice of interpreting the forces of yin and yang in natural landscapes to find auspicious locations for homes or tombs. It was believed to help align buildings with the cosmic flow of energy, a very practical application for its time. But the real game changer came when someone realized its potential for guiding journeys. You're observing a mariner, perhaps preparing for a long voyage across the turbulent South China Sea. He's not looking up at the unreliable sky, he's looking down at a small, magnetized needle, meticulously balanced on a pivot, encased in a small wooden box. This was the dry pivot compass, a far more reliable and portable device. The needle, usually made of steel, would be carefully magnetized by rubbing it against a lodestone. The impact of the compass on navigation was immense. It meant ships could sail further from shore, even in bad weather, opening up new trade routes and allowing for unprecedented exploration. Imagine the confidence it instilled in sailors, knowing they had a reliable guide even when the stars were hidden. This led to a boom in maritime trade during the Song dynasty, connecting China with distant lands across the Indian Ocean and beyond. It allowed for the development of larger, more sophisticated ships, knowing they could safely return home. Historians still argue about the exact diffusion of the compass to the west. Did it travel along the Silk Road, a land-based exchange of ideas? Or was it carried by Arab traders who learned of it during their voyages to China? Regardless of the precise path, its influence was global. It's hard to overstate how transformative this invention was. Without the compass, the age of exploration, the voyages that would eventually connect continents and truly globalize human interaction, would have been impossible or at least drastically delayed. It gave humanity a sense of direction, literally, and opened up the vast, mysterious oceans to human endeavor. From the silent guidance of the compass, you now turn your gaze to a material that is synonymous with China itself, silk. You're not just seeing a luxurious fabric, you're witnessing the birth of a global trade network, a cultural exchange, and a technological marvel that began thousands of years ago. Imagine, for a moment, a world where the finest fabrics were rough wools or scratchy linens. Then, suddenly, something utterly ethereal appears, shimmering with a soft luster, incredibly light, and yet surprisingly strong. That's silk. The story of silk begins shrouded in legend, dating back to around 2700 BCE. You hear the whisper of a tale. The Empress Leizu, wife of the mythical Yellow Emperor, was enjoying a cup of tea under a mulberry tree when a silkworm cocoon dropped into her cup. As she tried to retrieve it, the delicate threads began to unravel, revealing a single, continuous strand. Intrigued, she studied the worms, discovering how to reel the silk from their cocoons and even how to weave it into cloth. Whether this story is fact or charming folklore, it highlights the importance and reverence given to this discovery. You're now in a bustling ancient Chinese village, the air filled with the gentle rustle of mulberry leaves and the soft munch of countless silkworms. This isn't just about collecting cocoons, it's an intricate, demanding process known as sericulture. You see farmers carefully cultivating mulberry trees, as the silkworms, the larvae of the silk moth Bombyx mori, feed only on these leaves. The worms are then tended meticulously, almost like precious jewels, until they spin their cocoons. Once spun, the cocoons are often heated to kill the pupa inside before they hatch and break the silk fibers, ensuring a continuous, unbroken thread. Then comes the reeling. You watch as women, with incredible dexterity, unwind the impossibly fine threads from the cocoons, often by hand, pooling several strands together to create a stronger, usable fiber. This raw silk is then cleaned, twisted, and dyed with vibrant natural pigments, indigo for blues, madder for reds, turmeric for yellows. Finally, it's off to the loom. You see intricate patterns emerging as weavers meticulously work the threads, transforming them into shimmering fabrics, some so fine they feel like liquid against the skin. The Chinese guarded the secret of silk production with fierce intensity for centuries. Exporting silkworm eggs or mulberry seeds was punishable by death. For a long time, China was the only source of this coveted material, giving them a monopoly that fueled an unparalleled economic power. Imagine the desperation of other empires to acquire this white gold. It truly changed the world, leading to the establishment of the legendary Silk Road. You visualize vast caravans laden with bales of silk, traversing deserts and mountains, connecting the East with the West. It wasn't just silk that traveled, ideas, technologies, religions, and cultures flowed along this intricate network, creating a vibrant exchange that shaped civilizations across continents. Historians still debate the exact routes and precise volume of trade along the Silk Road at different periods, but its impact as a conduit for cultural diffusion is undisputed. Silk wasn't just a fabric, it was currency, a symbol of status, a diplomatic gift, and a driving force behind global interaction. This delicate, shimmering thread, born from a humble worm, spun into a tapestry of trade and influence that spanned thousands of miles and centuries, forever linking the world. It's quite the journey for a little insect, wouldn't you agree? From the silken threads that linked continents, you now move to another material that brought Chinese artistry and innovation to the world's dining tables and display cabinets: porcelain. Imagine your finest ceramic mug, perhaps thin and translucent, ringing with a delicate chime when you flick it. Now, trace that experience back over 1,000 years to the kilns of ancient China. Before porcelain, pottery was often thick, earthy, and utilitarian. Then came this ethereal, almost magical substance. You're standing in a potter's workshop, not just any workshop, but one that smells of damp clay and wood smoke, echoing with the rhythmic whir of a potter's wheel. It's the Tang dynasty, around the 7th or 8th century, and the craftspeople here are perfecting something extraordinary. They're working with a specific type of clay, kaolin, a fine white clay rich in a mineral called china clay, combined with another ingredient, paved, a feldspathic rock. This unique blend, when fired at incredibly high temperatures, creates something entirely new, porcelain. The process is meticulous and demanding. You watch as a master potter, with incredible focus, throws a vessel on the wheel, shaping it with a delicate touch. But it's not just about shaping. The drying process is crucial. The clay must dry slowly and evenly to prevent cracks. Then comes the glazing. You see a clear, almost liquid-like substance being applied to the piece. This glaze, made from finely ground minerals, will vitrify and become a smooth, glassy surface during firing. And then, the firing itself. This is where the magic truly happens, and where the temperature control becomes paramount. Porcelain requires temperatures ranging from 1,200 to 1,400 degrees Celsius, about 2,200 to 2,550 degrees Fahrenheit, far hotter than typical pottery kilns. You can almost feel the intense heat radiating from the brick kiln as the pieces undergo their transformation. Inside, the kaolin and paved fuse, becoming a non-porous, incredibly hard, and often translucent material. When the kiln cools and the pieces are carefully removed, they emerge transformed, pure white, often translucent, and ringing with a distinctive chime. Early Chinese porcelain was often simple, yet incredibly elegant, reflecting the aesthetic values of the time. But over the centuries, it became increasingly elaborate. You visualize the famous blue and white porcelain from the Yuan and Ming dynasties, with its intricate dragons, floral motifs, and landscape scenes, painted with cobalt imported from Persia. Imagine the painstaking detail, each brushstroke perfect, turning a functional object into a work of art. This porcelain wasn't just admired in China, it became a global sensation. It was literally known as China in the West, a testament to its origin. The demand for Chinese porcelain drove immense international trade. You can picture European royalty, fascinated by its beauty and delicate strength, eagerly acquiring these exotic pieces, often paying exorbitant prices. It was a status symbol, a coveted luxury item that traveled along the same maritime routes as silk, influencing pottery styles and decorative arts across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Historians still argue about the precise moment and method by which the secrets of porcelain production eventually made their way to other parts of the world, with European attempts often failing for centuries before they finally cracked the code. But what is clear is that this white gold from China truly revolutionized dining, art, and global commerce, proving that something as seemingly simple as a cup could, indeed, change the world. From the delicate beauty of porcelain, you now delve into something far more fundamental, yet equally transformative, the very metals that shape tools, weapons, and entire civilizations. You're moving into the realm of metallurgy, specifically iron smelting, and you're about to witness how ancient Chinese ingenuity revolutionized the way humanity worked with the hardest elements of the earth. Imagine a world where bronze, a softer, less common alloy, was the pinnacle of metalworking. Then, suddenly, a new, stronger, more abundant metal enters the scene, capable of far greater utility. That metal is iron. While iron was discovered and utilized in various parts of the world, the Chinese, particularly during the Warring States period, around 475 to 221 BCE, developed remarkably advanced techniques for smelting and casting it. You find yourself standing near a towering furnace, the air thick with the smell of coal smoke and molten rock. This isn't just a simple campfire, it's a sophisticated blast furnace designed to achieve incredibly high temperatures. Unlike earlier methods that produced wrought iron, a more malleable but weaker form, the Chinese perfected the art of producing cast iron. You watch as iron ore, mixed with charcoal, which acts as both fuel and a reducing agent, is fed into the top of the furnace. Below, bellows, often powered by water wheels or even foot pedals, constantly pump air into the base, creating an intense, sustained heat. The temperatures inside reach well over 1,100 degrees Celsius, 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt the iron. This molten iron, being very liquid, flows out of the bottom of the furnace and can be poured directly into molds. This ability to cast iron directly was a massive leap forward. Imagine trying to forge a complex tool or a large cauldron from wrought iron. It would involve endless hammering and reheating. But with cast iron, you could pour the liquid metal into intricate molds, creating standardized tools, weapons, agricultural implements like plowshares, and even cooking pots with relative ease and efficiency. This wasn't just about making things stronger, it was about mass production. You see rows of identical iron plows, ready to transform agriculture, or vast quantities of iron weapons equipping armies on a scale previously unimaginable. One quirky tidbit about Chinese ironworking is their early development of steel, long before the West. They didn't just stop at cast iron, which can be brittle. By carefully controlling the carbon content and using techniques like co-fusion, melting together cast iron and wrought iron, they were able to produce forms of steel, a much stronger and more flexible alloy, especially suitable for swords and fine tools. Historians still argue about the precise dates and widespread adoption of these advanced steelmaking processes, but evidence points to sophisticated methods that allowed for superior blades and implements. The impact of advanced iron smelting was profound. It powered agricultural revolutions, as stronger plows allowed for more efficient farming, leading to increased food production and supporting larger populations. It transformed warfare, providing durable weapons and defensive fortifications. It also allowed for the creation of new tools for crafts and construction, propelling technological progress in countless other areas. You see the sheer physical labor involved, the roaring furnaces, the sweat and grime of the workers, but also the undeniable progress they unleashed. This mastery of iron laid a metallic foundation for many of the subsequent innovations that would emerge from this ancient civilization. From the blazing heat of iron furnaces, you now transition to a realm of quiet, almost mystical healing. You're stepping into an ancient Chinese clinic, the air scented not with smoke, but with dried herbs and the faint, metallic tang of very fine needles. This is the world of acupuncture, a practice that has alleviated pain and promoted well-being for thousands of years, long before modern medicine had even conceived of the nervous system. Imagine suffering from a nagging ache, a persistent headache, or a discomfort that simply won't go away. In this ancient setting, you wouldn't reach for a pill. Instead, a practitioner would greet you, perhaps asking about your diet, your sleep, and even your emotional state. This holistic approach is central to traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, which views the body as an interconnected system of energy, or qi, pronounced qi. You watch as the practitioner examines a patient, perhaps feeling their pulse at multiple points, or observing the subtle color and texture of their tongue. These seemingly minor details are, in TCM, crucial diagnostic tools, offering insights into the flow and balance of qi within the body. The fundamental concept is that illness arises when the flow of qi is disrupted or blocked along specific pathways, or meridians, that run throughout the body, much like invisible rivers of energy. The treatment itself is remarkably simple, yet profound. The practitioner selects specific points on the body, points that lie along these meridians. You observe them gently inserting incredibly fine, sterile needles, some as thin as a human hair, into these chosen points. There's no dramatic plunging or painful sensation. Often, the patient feels little more than a slight prick, or a dull ache, or perhaps a tingling sensation as the qi is said to be stimulated. The needles might be left in place for a short period, sometimes gently manipulated, or even warmed with a burning herb called moxibustion, further stimulating the points. A quirky tidbit: some early acupuncture needles weren't even metal. Primitive versions were made from sharpened bone, bamboo, or even fish scales. This underscores the ancient origins of the practice, rooted in observations of the body and natural materials. Acupuncture is mentioned in the Huangdi Neijing, or the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine, a foundational text of TCM believed to have been compiled over several centuries, dating back to at least 300 BCE. This text meticulously details the meridian system, the functions of various organs, as understood through TCM theory, and the principles of acupuncture. It's a comprehensive guide, outlining a sophisticated medical system that developed independently of Western medical traditions. Historians still argue about the precise evolutionary path of acupuncture and how much of its current form solidified in earlier dynasties versus later ones. However, its enduring presence and adaptation are undeniable. It's not just about pain relief. Practitioners use it for a wide range of conditions, from digestive issues to stress and sleep disturbances, all based on the principle of restoring balance to the body's energy. This ancient Chinese invention, refined over millennia, continues to offer a unique and effective approach to health and healing, a testament to the deep understanding of the human body that flourished centuries ago. From the subtle energy flows of acupuncture, you now move to a profound intersection of engineering and the natural world, the very ground beneath your feet. You're transported to the imperial court of the Han dynasty, specifically to the year 132 CE, and you're about to witness an invention that seems almost impossible for its time, the seismograph. Imagine living in a land prone to earthquakes, where sudden tremors could devastate cities and bring down empires, with absolutely no warning. The ability to detect these subterranean rumblings, even from hundreds of miles away, would be nothing short of miraculous. You are standing before an imposing bronze vessel, about 6 feet in diameter, adorned with intricate patterns of mountains, dragons, and birds. It's not just a decorative piece, it's a highly sensitive instrument, designed by the brilliant scholar and inventor Zhang Heng. Around the base of the vessel are 8 dragon heads, each clutching a bronze ball in its mouth. Directly beneath each dragon is a bronze toad with its mouth open, seemingly waiting to catch the ball. You lean closer, curious about how this marvel works. The genius lies within. Inside the vessel, completely hidden from view, is a delicate pendulum system. This central pendulum, incredibly sensitive to vibrations, is suspended in such a way that even the slightest tremor will cause it to swing. When a significant seismic wave passes, the pendulum's movement triggers a series of levers and gears. This internal mechanism is the quirky, almost Rube Goldberg-esque heart of the device. Now, imagine a distant earthquake, hundreds of miles away. The ground beneath the seismograph imperceptibly shifts. The internal pendulum swings, activating a specific lever that corresponds to the direction of the tremor. This lever, in turn, causes one of the dragon heads to open its mouth, dropping the bronze ball into the waiting mouth of the toad below. Clang! The sound would instantly alert observers, not just to the fact of an earthquake, but crucially, to its direction. If the ball dropped from the dragon facing west, they knew the earthquake had occurred to the west. This was revolutionary. Before Zhang Heng's seismograph, the only way to know an earthquake had occurred was to feel it directly, or to receive news days or weeks later from affected regions. The seismograph provided early warning, allowing the emperor and officials to quickly send aid to the affected areas, or even prepare for potential aftershocks. This wasn't just a scientific curiosity, it was a tool for disaster relief and imperial governance. Historians still argue about the exact mechanics of the internal pendulum system, as no original Zhang Heng seismograph has survived intact. Our understanding comes from historical texts and later reconstructions. The challenge lay in making the pendulum sensitive enough to distant tremors but stable enough not to be triggered by local disturbances like a passing cart or a gust of wind. Zhang Heng's design managed this remarkable balance. This invention demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of mechanics and observation. It's a testament to the Chinese pursuit of knowledge and their ability to apply scientific principles to practical problems. The seismograph wasn't just a clever device, it was a symbol of an empire's capacity to understand and respond to the forces of nature, providing an early, vital connection to events unfolding far beyond their immediate perception. From the deep rumblings of the earth, your gaze now lifts to the sky, to something seemingly playful yet deeply significant, the kite. You're transported to ancient China, perhaps around the 5th century BCE, where you see not just a child's toy, but an early experiment in aerodynamics, a precursor to human flight, and a surprisingly versatile tool of war and communication. Imagine a world where the only way to observe things from above was to climb a tree or a mountain. The ability to send an object aloft, to literally gain a new perspective, was nothing short of groundbreaking. The origins of the kite are, as with many ancient inventions, somewhat debated, but the earliest reliable accounts place its invention firmly in China. You might envision the philosopher Mozi, or his contemporary Lu Ban, often credited with its creation. They weren't just playing, they were tinkering with principles of lift and drag, perhaps inspired by falling leaves or birds in flight. Early kites weren't the lightweight plastic and nylon creations you see today. They were likely made from wood, bamboo, and silk or paper, perhaps shaped like birds or mythical creatures. You watch as a large, intricate kite is launched. It pulls against its tether, a testament to the unseen forces of the wind. This wasn't just a recreational pastime, kites quickly found practical applications. In warfare, for instance, you'd see kites used for reconnaissance. Imagine an army besieging a city, a large kite, perhaps carrying an observer, though this was extremely dangerous and rare, could provide a bird's-eye view of enemy fortifications, troop movements, and strategic weaknesses. It was the ancient world's drone, offering invaluable intelligence. A particularly quirky historical tidbit involves a general named Han Xin during the Chu-Han contention around 200 BCE. He supposedly used a kite to measure the distance to an enemy's fortress. By knowing the length of the string and the angle of the kite, he could estimate the distance, helping him to plan his siege tactics. This wasn't just clever, it was an early form of aerial surveying. Kites were also used for signaling, sending messages over long distances, or even for psychological warfare, with fearsome dragon kites flown overhead to intimidate enemy troops. Beyond military uses, kites became a part of popular culture and festivals, often decorated with vibrant colors and elaborate designs, symbolizing good fortune or warding off evil spirits. You see children running through fields, laughing as their simple kites dance in the wind, a timeless image. Historians still debate the extent to which Chinese kite technology directly influenced early European attempts at flight or hot air balloons. While direct links are hard to prove, the principles demonstrated by kites, generating lift from air currents, were undoubtedly understood and applied by the Chinese centuries before similar concepts were explored elsewhere. The kite, seemingly a simple toy, embodies a profound leap in human understanding of aerodynamics and our relationship with the air. It allowed humanity to literally reach for the sky, to understand the invisible forces of the wind, and to conceive of flight in ways that would eventually lead to far more complex airborne vehicles. It was a silent whisper of possibility, a precursor to the roaring engines of modern aviation, proving that even a piece of paper on a string could inspire monumental changes. From soaring kites to gliding across water, you now witness another ingenious Chinese innovation, the paddle wheel boat. Imagine a world where river travel was slow, dependent on favorable currents, or required back-breaking manual labor with oars. Then, picture a vessel that could churn its way against the flow, propelled by the very ingenuity of its design. You're transported to the Song dynasty, around the 10th or 11th century, a period of immense technological flourishing, where waterways were the highways of commerce and military movement. You're standing on a riverbank, watching a strange but effective vessel approach. Instead of rows of oarsmen, you see large wheels mounted on the sides of the boat, or sometimes even within the hull, each fitted with a series of paddles. As the wheels turn, the paddles dip into the water, pushing against it and propelling the boat forward. It's a concept that seems simple to us now, but it was revolutionary then. The power source for these paddle wheels varied. For smaller boats, you might see them operated manually by foot pedals or hand cranks, perhaps by a single person or a small crew. But for larger vessels, you'd witness a marvel of engineering, the use of treadmills, often powered by a team of human laborers or even animals, turning the wheels. This sophisticated system allowed for continuous, efficient propulsion, far more effective than individual oarsmen. Imagine the sheer reduction in human effort, or the increased speed and cargo capacity these boats offered. The military applications of paddle wheel boats were particularly impressive. You can almost feel the spray as a large, armored warship, bristling with crossbows and possibly even early gunpowder weapons, slices through the water. These wheelboats, or treadmill boats, as they were sometimes called, provided unprecedented maneuverability and speed in naval engagements. They could navigate against strong currents, giving them a tactical advantage in battles waged on rivers and lakes. One quirky fact, some of these paddle wheel boats were designed to be so fast they were called Flying Lightning or Seahawk ships, which probably made for very impressive fleet parades. These boats were a significant factor in Song China's naval dominance. They were used not just for fighting, but also for transporting goods and troops efficiently across the vast network of rivers and canals that crisscrossed the empire. The Grand Canal, a colossal engineering feat itself, became an even more vital artery with the advent of such vessels, facilitating the movement of grain from the productive south to the often food-deficit north. Historians still debate the exact mechanisms and power systems used in the largest paddle wheel ships described in historical texts, and how widely they were adopted across different naval fleets. However, the consistent descriptions and the strategic advantage they conferred suggest a widespread and successful application of this technology. The paddle wheel boat wasn't just a clever design, it was a testament to the Chinese mastery of mechanics and hydrodynamics. It transformed riverine and coastal transport, making it faster, more efficient, and less dependent on human muscle power or natural currents. It was a vital link in the chain of innovations that facilitated trade, supported military might, and connected disparate regions of a vast empire. From the churning waters propelled by paddle wheels, you now move to a weapon that revolutionized projectile warfare, the crossbow. Imagine the frantic chaos of ancient battle, where archers relied on immense strength and years of training to draw a powerful bow. Then, picture a weapon that could be loaded, cocked, and fired with relative ease, delivering a bolt with devastating force and accuracy, even by a less experienced soldier. You're witnessing this transition in ancient China, with early forms dating back to the 7th century BCE, well before its widespread adoption in the West. You're standing on a battlefield or perhaps in a military training ground. You observe the traditional archer, a figure of strength and skill, straining to draw a heavy recurve bow. It takes immense upper body strength, and precision aiming is a learned art. Now, look at the crossbow. It's a very different beast. It consists of a bow mounted horizontally on a stock, with a trigger mechanism to hold the string under tension and release it at will. The key innovation here is the trigger mechanism. Early Chinese crossbow triggers were marvels of bronze engineering, often incredibly intricate and precise. You see a series of interlocking levers and catches, designed to hold the immense tension of the bowstring securely and release it smoothly with just a pull of a finger. This allowed the user to hold the weapon cocked indefinitely, aiming carefully without fatigue, unlike a traditional bow which required constant muscle tension. This ability to maintain tension allowed for much heavier draw weights than could be sustained by a human archer, translating into greater power and range. A particularly ingenious development was the repeating crossbow, or Yuga Nu, often, though perhaps inaccurately, attributed to the Three Kingdoms period strategist Yuga Liang. You watch a soldier operate this weapon. With one hand, they pump a lever back and forth, and with each pump, a bolt is automatically loaded from a magazine and the bowstring is drawn and released, firing in rapid succession. Imagine the terrifying rate of fire this would allow, unleashing a storm of bolts upon an enemy. It might not have had the range or power of a heavy single-shot crossbow, but its ability to unleash multiple projectiles quickly was unparalleled. This rapid-fire capability is a truly quirky tidbit, showcasing an early concept of automatic loading centuries before modern firearms. The military impact of the crossbow was profound. It democratized archery, allowing large numbers of infantry to become effective missile troops with relatively little training. A farmer, given a crossbow, could quickly learn to operate it and contribute significant firepower to an army. This was a game changer in mass warfare, altering tactics and making armies far more lethal. The bolts fired by crossbows could penetrate armor that traditional arrows might struggle with, making them particularly effective against heavily armored cavalry or infantry. Historians still argue about the exact developmental timeline and the widespread use of different types of crossbows across various Chinese dynasties. However, the evidence is clear that the crossbow was a staple of Chinese armies for centuries, evolving from simple hunting tools into sophisticated military instruments. It was a weapon of precision and power, a testament to ancient Chinese engineering ingenuity, and a formidable force that shaped the course of countless battles and the very nature of warfare. From the precise tension of a crossbow bolt, you now marvel at an architectural feat that defies gravity and time, the segmental arch bridge. Imagine crossing a raging river or a deep gorge, not by clunky wooden planks or laborious ferry, but by a graceful stone span that seems almost to float above the water. You're transported to ancient China, perhaps as early as the 6th century CE, witnessing engineering brilliance that predates similar Western innovations by centuries. For a long time, bridge building was dominated by the semicircular arch. While strong, a semicircular arch requires a significant rise, meaning the bridge itself has to be quite high, or the span has to be relatively short. This could be problematic for navigation, or for spanning very wide or shallow waterways. But the Chinese engineers developed a more efficient and elegant solution, the segmental arch. You're standing at the edge of a river, gazing up at the Anji Bridge, also known as the Jiaozhou Bridge, completed around 605 CE. It's an astounding sight. Unlike a full semicircle, its arch is a flatter, shallower segment of a circle. This design means it requires less material, allows for a wider span with a lower rise, and creates a more open space beneath, which is perfect for boats to pass through, even during flood season. You can imagine the murmurs of awe from travelers as they encountered such a structure. The genius of the Anji Bridge goes even further. You notice that within the main arch, there are four smaller, semicircular arches, 2 on each side. These aren't just decorative, they serve a crucial engineering purpose. They reduce the overall weight of the bridge, which lessens the stress on the main arch. They also allow floodwaters to pass through more easily, reducing the pressure on the bridge during heavy rains. It's a remarkable example of structural efficiency and resilience, a design that has allowed it to stand for over 1,400 years, surviving countless floods and earthquakes. This is a prime example of form meeting function in a beautifully ingenious way. The construction methods were also remarkably advanced. You might see workers using sophisticated falsework, temporary support structures, to hold the stones in place until the keystone was laid, locking the arch into place. The stones themselves were meticulously cut and fitted without mortar in many instances, relying instead on the precise interlock of the masonry, making it incredibly durable. Historians still argue about the precise lineage of segmental arch technology and whether there were earlier, less well-documented examples. However, the Anji Bridge stands as an undeniable testament to the Chinese mastery of this technique. Its influence on later bridge construction, both within China and potentially abroad, is a subject of ongoing scholarly debate, but its unique features demonstrate a profound understanding of structural mechanics. The segmental arch bridge wasn't just a way to get from one side of a river to another, it was a symbol of human triumph over natural obstacles, a testament to the power of applied knowledge. It facilitated trade, allowed for easier troop movements, and connected communities, literally binding an empire together with graceful arcs of stone. It's a reminder that even in ancient times, the ambition to build bigger, stronger, and more elegantly was alive and well, leaving a lasting legacy etched in stone. From the enduring arches of ancient bridges, you now shift your senses to a more comforting, everyday ritual, sipping a warm beverage. You're entering the world of tea cultivation and consumption, a seemingly simple act that blossomed into a global cultural phenomenon and a major economic force, all stemming from ancient China. Imagine a world where water was often unsafe to drink, and hot beverages were primarily herbal concoctions or fermented grains. Then comes tea, a simple leaf that would transform social customs and global trade. The story of tea, like many ancient innovations, is steeped in legend. You hear the tale of the mythical Emperor Zhang Heng around 2737 BCE. He was boiling water in his garden when a few leaves from a nearby tree drifted into his pot. Curious, he tasted the infusion and found it refreshing and invigorating. Whether this happened exactly as described or not, it beautifully captures the accidental discovery of tea's delightful properties. You are now walking through terraced hillsides, the air humid and fragrant, dotted with rows of small, verdant shrubs, Camellia sinensis, the tea plant. This isn't just about picking leaves, it's a sophisticated process of cultivation and processing, refined over millennia. You see farmers meticulously tending the plants, knowing that the quality of the tea depends on careful pruning, soil management, and the precise timing of the harvest. Only the youngest, most tender leaves and buds are plucked, often by hand, with incredible care. Once harvested, these leaves undergo various processing methods, leading to the different types of tea we know today. You observe workers spreading leaves to wither, then perhaps rolling them to break down cell walls, allowing enzymes to begin oxidation. For green tea, the leaves are quickly heated to stop this oxidation, preserving their fresh, grassy flavor. For black tea, which the Chinese often call red tea, the leaves are allowed to fully oxidize, developing darker colors and richer, maltier flavors. You might even see the delicate process for white tea, where only the youngest buds are picked and minimally processed. A quirky fact, early tea consumption wasn't always about sipping a hot brew. Sometimes, tea leaves were ground into a powder, then whisked into hot water, a method that later became central to the Japanese tea ceremony. Or, even stranger, some early tea preparations involved cooking the leaves with grains or even salt, making it more of a savory soup than a sweet beverage. The spread of tea from China was a slow, gradual process, initially traveling along the Silk Road to neighboring regions and then eventually by sea. It wasn't just a drink, it became a catalyst for social gatherings, a symbol of hospitality, and an integral part of philosophical and artistic pursuits. The tea ceremony in China, and later in Japan, developed into an art form, emphasizing mindfulness, aesthetic appreciation, and social harmony. Historians still debate the precise dates and routes of tea's journey to different parts of the world, and how its preparation methods evolved in various cultures. However, its global impact is undeniable. Tea became a major commodity, driving trade, influencing agriculture, and shaping cultural practices from London to Lahore. This humble leaf, cultivated and perfected in ancient China, quieted nervous minds, stimulated conversations, and literally quenched the thirst of billions across continents, becoming one of the most widely consumed beverages in human history. From the soothing ritual of tea, you now enter a realm of abstract value, where wealth takes on a new, revolutionary form: paper money. Imagine a world where every transaction, large or small, required you to carry heavy metal coins or cumbersome bars of silver. Then, picture the sheer convenience of lightweight slips of paper, imbued with the trust of an empire. You're transported to China during the Song dynasty, around the 11th century, witnessing the birth of fiat currency, a concept that underpins modern economies worldwide. For centuries, transactions in China, like most places, relied on commodity money, copper coins for everyday purchases, and silver or gold for larger ones. As trade expanded, particularly during the flourishing Song dynasty, the sheer volume of metal currency needed became a logistical nightmare. Imagine merchants traveling vast distances with carts full of heavy copper cash, risking robbery, or trying to settle huge deals with thousands of individual coins. It was inefficient, dangerous, and physically demanding. The initial steps towards paper money were gradual. You'd see early forms of flying cash or feiqian emerging in the Tang dynasty around the 9th century. These weren't exactly currency, but rather promissory notes or exchange certificates issued by wealthy merchants or regional governments. You could deposit your copper coins in one city and receive a note, which you could then redeem for coins in another. It was a brilliant solution for long-distance trade, reducing the need to transport bulk coinage. It's akin to an ancient traveler's check system. But the true innovation arrived during the Song dynasty, driven by both economic necessity and military funding. You are now witnessing the issuance of official, government-backed paper currency. The government, needing to finance costly wars and manage a booming economy, began printing notes. The first widely accepted paper currency was called jiaozi. You hold one in your hand, a printed sheet with intricate designs, serial numbers, and official seals, designed to prevent counterfeiting. It bears the promise of the government to redeem it for a certain amount of coin or silver. This was a massive leap of faith, requiring trust in the issuing authority. A quirky tidbit is that initially, these notes often had expiry dates or were only valid in certain regions, reflecting the government's early cautious approach. Over time, however, they became more standardized and widely accepted. The impact of paper money was transformative. It drastically simplified large commercial transactions, stimulated trade, and made tax collection more efficient. Imagine the sudden fluidity it brought to the economy, freeing up physical metal for other uses. It also allowed the government to manage its finances more flexibly, though, as history would repeatedly show, it also introduced the potential for inflation if too much money was printed. Historians still argue about the precise motivations behind the full governmental adoption of paper money, with some emphasizing the need for military funding and others highlighting the broader economic pressures of a growing commercial society. Regardless, China was centuries ahead of the West in this monumental shift from commodity-backed currency to abstract fiat money. Marco Polo, the famous Venetian traveler, was utterly astounded by the concept of paper money when he encountered it in Yuan dynasty China, following the Song, finding it a bizarre yet incredibly efficient system. This final invention we explore tonight wasn't just about a new way to pay, it was about a fundamental reconceptualization of wealth and value. It paved the way for modern banking systems, global finance, and the abstract economies we navigate today. It's a testament to the Chinese genius for practical innovation, even in something as intangible as money. As the echoes of ancient Chinese ingenuity fade, and the long journey through history gently draws to a close, you might find yourself drifting into a state of quiet contemplation. Imagine the brilliant minds, the calloused hands, the patient perseverance that brought forth these marvels, from the rustling of the first sheet of paper to the serene wisdom of the tea ceremony, and the silent, guiding hand of the compass. Allow the lingering scent of mulberry leaves, the faint sound of a distant drum from an ancient paddle wheel boat, and the gentle whisper of a silken scroll to wash over you. Remember that many of the comforts and advancements we take for granted in our modern world have roots stretching back to these distant, inventive shores. The world is far more interconnected than we often realize, a tapestry woven with threads from across millennia and continents. So, as you settle deeper into your pillow, let the images soften and blur. The bustling workshops, the quiet laboratories, the vast trade routes, they all recede into the peaceful darkness. You've traversed a long road tonight, absorbing stories of incredible human ingenuity. Let those thoughts gently dissolve, leaving you with a sense of wonder and a calm heart. The day's demands are far behind you, and the stillness of the night embraces you. Rest deeply, and may your dreams be as rich and expansive as the history we've explored together.